Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Sean Renzo Head and you are here for another interview. I am joined by Kyle Abbott and he is a professional shamisen player. Welcome in, Kyle.
It's good to be here, Sean. Thank you for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
Kyle, I'm a professional.
So I want to just jump right into it with how you got into shamisen playing and all the Japanese music stuff. Um, from what I know of you, you actually come from a family of Japanese musicians.
Kind of, but partially true. Actually, we also, as a family, we played and play bluegrass. As it were, my brother would play banjo, mother bass, father guitar, and me mandolin. But at the same time, my dad was also playing shakuhachi because, like 45 years ago, he studied in Japan with Godo Yamaguchi and Junsuke Kawase and some different people. So growing up, even though we play bluegrass together, like from age 7 and such, or in folk music, almost every day he would play shakuhachi. So hearing that, trying to play, and of course, it's hard to get that lip position at the beginning to make it sound. Like around age 12, I could finally start to make it sound. And then he, so we could all play together. He gave me like tapes and CDs to learn pieces, and the notes and the scores. And on there, I heard koto, and I really wanted to learn koto, but because I'd been learning these bluegrass instruments, mandolin, fiddle, banjo, and such, shamisen is close to banjo, so my dad suggested, try learning shamisen. And it just so happened at the time, the fellow Kevin Metz, who's a notable figure for foreigners starting shamisen, or for foreigners in shamisen, he was playing in Santa Cruz, doing street live, just a couple blocks from my house. So often I'd walk downtown and see him just play there on shamisen, do Tsugaru style. But at that time, at the old age of 14 or so, I wasn't into the Tsugaru shamisen, the Tsugaru style, because I thought it would be the young people's music, or I was into the traditional, wanting to do like ideally Naguta and Jiuta, and such.
That was going to be my follow-up question for you, was about Jiuta, Nagauta, because that's actually the music that I prefer to listen to. But I know that a lot of that Tsugaru shamisen style is so popular. Not to say that there isn't great Tsugaru pieces, but in general, I do prefer that. But that's interesting that was the one. It's interesting that you didn't get captured by the kind of like the modern, exciting version, but rather the old, historic, and traditional version. And I'm guessing that might just be because of the link to the shakuhachi and having it a lot more similar. Would that be fair to say?
I think so. And at the time, I was more into traditional musics, like anything modern, electronic, I didn't even listen to. I wanted acoustic, world traditional, Greek, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, of course, anything that was authentic, quote unquote.
And then how did you move from the beginning interest of this to actually getting this instrument in your hands and starting to practice and starting to learn stuff? Was it difficult for you to find a teacher? And I believe that your father, of course, speaks Japanese. Do you speak Japanese as well?
He doesn't, at least he forgot most of it. It was quite a while ago. I do speak Japanese. I started learning after starting shamisen. Yeah, I like language, but also felt shamisen being more as something I would do. Yeah, it seemed important to be able to know what people were saying.
Yes, especially since a lot, well, of course, in Nagauta, you have to sing. And it'd be kind of difficult to memorize just a bunch of syllables rather than, just memorizing a story.
Yeah, right. Well, it was impressive. We were recently listening to a documentary. I think it was on country music or bluegrass music. And they were talking about the Ken Burns documentary. They're talking about these players from Japan and how they learn to sing, the bluegrass pieces syllable by syllable,
Hmm.
kind of like phonetically. Is that the right?
Yeah, phonetically.
So not I guess not knowing the English, what it actually meant, but just memorizing how it sounded, and then they went to America and performed and would just speak it out.
Wow, that's really fascinating. It's also really interesting that you're coming from this bluegrass style, and because there, I would just now I want you, because you're the expert on both of these parts of this stuff, so I want you to tell me if I'm wrong. But there's a lot of similarities between like the tsugaru style and the bluegrass style.
I think so. I mean, my feeling in Minyo in general is that there was a lot of similarity between what you could say old bluegrass, old time, folk music, mountain music, and Minyo folk music. Because there is that shared, say, I don't know, music made by the people about real things, about real life,
Hmm.
whether it be folk music from Peru, India, whatnot. Somehow it all sounds off. It all sounds legit when played on shamisen, sung with shamisen. Also, possibly because its roots, the shamisen does come from Africa, 2,000 years prior. It made its way, eastward, eventually to China, and then from there to Japan. But there are these 3-string spike lutes around Asia, India, whatnot. Like, for example, Dosh Pulur in Tuva is a 3-string, has a goat head or something, but it's this three-string lute, and then there's all sorts of
Have you tried other string instruments in Japan besides the shamisen? For example, like biwa or like kolkyu?
Kokyu, I haven't. I do have a biwa right here, as a matter of fact.
Because
Um,
actually, biwa is one of my favorite instruments. Yeah, that's beautiful.
yeah, oh yeah, me too. Especially with singing. You
Mm.
know, I love
Now, I'm testing my own skills here. That's a chikuzen biwa, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It turns out it's Yoko Hiroka.
Yes, I do.
This is her old concert. One of my excuse me, San Jose, one of my shamisen students in San Jose happened to have it and passed it on, and they love to learn, but time has been the
Yes, yes. It's one of the, there's a bunch of things that I want to learn and I want to do with Shakuhachi, and there's always seems to be you know, I'm working like 16 hours a day, balancing between the YouTube channel, doing the interviews, practicing teaching and all that kind of stuff. And then when you get to the end, you're like, I've got 30 minutes. I can either sit here and watch some TV and finally relax and go to bed, or I can practice for 30 minutes. And a lot of times TV wins because I need that. I need that me time to just sit down and not do anything.
absolutely. I totally agree.
Mhm. So, what are some of the things that you're doing now? You do lots of concertizing. You do lots of collaborations too with other shamisen players and other artists as well, taiko and whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you're doing right now and some of the interesting things you have done?
Yeah, I would love to. Uh, well, starting with the now, because that's where we're at. Um, One very interesting thing that we're doing, I feel has the most growth for the future, is I've been collaborating with um, a few couple Taiko fellows, Patrick Oye, Joel Mankey, Arthur Muck, and Sean Shibata, who's in Hawaii with Kenny Endo's group. Um, we've been working together to create, and Sue Bunyamin in Germany. Um, we've been working to create these camps, you could say, where Taiko people and shamisen people come together and they learn an ensemble piece. Because the state of the taiko world today for, I guess, North American taiko, it tends to be just mostly taiko only, with Fue, of course. But there hasn't been all that much inclusion of shamisen, which is a shame because there are, I think now there's at least 300 Bachira members in the US, if not more. I'm sure there's more. People all around who are learning shamisen, and they could so easily play together with taiko and other instruments, but it's just not part of the paradigm yet. So yeah, so in this group, in this event, we're bringing together taiko people and shamisen people to not only learn a piece with their favorite instruments, but they have the opportunity to learn each other's instruments. Shamisen people try taiko people begin shamisen. And we've only had 2 events, one in Seattle and one in St. Louis. And it has been amazingly successful. Just the community bonding feeling that's been happening. So,
that's, and I totally agree with you. There are actually there's a lot of taiko players for sure. And, my only problem with the taiko groups is that a lot of times it's just like the modern, kind of like a modern approach of it. So there's not a lot of the traditional elements that are in there, because it takes a long time. So I think we're still in such a beginning stages of the big taiko boom, in America, that the traditional thing hasn't set in yet, which I'm really looking forward to. But at the same time, there's also a lot of shamisen players, and I even know a couple here that are in Houston that are just amateurs, and I think there's 1 or 2 professionals that are living here. And it's it's amazing that you could just like I think that itself is way more affluent than shakuhachi is. Shakuhachi, you go to a town and you're lucky if people have actually heard it, depending on where you're going. Now I'm thinking like, if you go to Tennessee does not have shakuhachi, but what Tennessee does have? A taiko group. And it's like, like that's what I mean. Like you're gonna have shakuhachi definitely is not as popular, and I think that's primarily just due to the sheer difficulty of it, and it's hard to grasp that music. But there's taiko and shamisen both have a really nice opening musical selection that you can choose from, and then from there, then you can get into the really deep old music that I think what captivates you and me.
Mm-hmm. Don't you? I'd always assumed that Shakuhachi, was more popular or had more interest in at least the States and around the world because of that connection to Zen. Like if people got into Zen, they would connect to Shakuhachi, whereas taiko and shamisen, especially shamisen.
I would say that I think that there's an interest in listening to it, or an interest. There might be more of an interest to actually be like buy a CD, maybe in that case, or actually to do like use it as like meditation practice, but not necessarily enough for people to go out and buy it, because there's this stigma about it that it's just so difficult, which there are parts of it that are difficult, but when you put that persona in front of it of it's the most difficult instrument in the world, most people don't want to play it. They're like, well, Shinobue sounds great.
Yeah,
So,
I think for me.
So,
Well, it's fun. Oh yeah, go on.
Oh no, please.
Well, yeah, in the shamisen, sorry, in the taiko world, apparently 2 reasons why taikoists haven't taken it on as much, because there is interest in, from what I've been hearing among taiko groups, there is interest in shamisen and having shamisen as part of the ensemble. But 1, price. It's it's known, it's infamous for being an expensive instrument to start. And 2, it's people do think it's very difficult. They probably hear Yoshida Kyodai, Agatsuma, these amazing players, and think that that's what I have to sound like, and then they don't.
Yeah, I get that too, and I understand that that's part of it. Shakuhachi is, I think. Well, how much does an average shamisen go for? Like, if you just wanted to get like an intermediate level shamisen, how much would you have to spend?
Well, now that's been a main project, and let me go to my right and to show you.
Because that's right, you make shamisen, correct?
Correct. Bridge. Here we go. the two you see before you now, these are both homemades. Um, this is Mr. Number 8, I believe, and this is number 6. But I've been finding that up until now, the cheapest shamisen you could get at Bachido was $350, and the reason we could before we started selling Bachido at that price, it tended to be for brand new shamisen at least $600, $700, $800.
Mm-hmm.
Because the maker makes the instrument and then they sell to the retailer, and then the retailer adds at least 200% profit margin.
Yes, of course.
But we
and that's fairly normal, even when you buy one of the things that you have to expect in lots of places is that for luxury goods as well, it's a 40% markup when you go into any department store whatsoever. And then when you have something that sells less frequently, or there's a smaller audience for it, they're going to raise the price up a lot. So think of like a lot of Japanese bookstores in America, you look on the back of the book, you can see the yen price, and it'll be just 1,000 yen, which is for us, like in America, like $7, but they're going to sell it in America for $21 because they have to have the the profit margin as well as the import tax that goes along with it. So that's one of the things that happens with shakuhachi. But even to get a fairly decent shakuhachi that's made of bamboo, and to not regret the price, or like not regret the purchase, you're looking at spending about $1,000. So that's another barrier that gets in. But however we have the plastic shakuhachis and that have come in, which I think have helped. But I'm interested to see what you're doing with this little shamisen here you have in your hands.
Oh yes. Well, actually, but before I move on to that, there's an interesting part for shamisen is there's such a paradigm in Japan of the more you spend, or higher price equals higher quality,
Mm-hmm.
and which of course can be true most often, but that's been kind of taken to a whole new level where the price is just increasing irregardless of the quality. For example, the people who make we have a direct connection at Bachido with the shamisen makers, so we skip the middleman, skip the retailer. we only take 30% profit, which is kind of what I call the Costco model, which I think for all their foods take 30%. And with the president of, and they're like a 120, 130-year-old workshop in Japan, and they, for example, recently shamisen retailer ordered a shamisen from them for about $3,000, and they bought it and then they resold it for $10,000. Which is, both in Japan, they're not selling abroad, but it's just because they can, because it's worth more, whatever, they sell it for more than double.
And that was I won't name any names of certain shakuhachi players, but there were famous shakuhachi players in the past who used to buy shakuhachi and then put their own stamp on it and then turn around and sell it for a lot more. Yeah, the stories already. So, this is another thing as well. And that's one of the reasons why I've been working so closely with the maker, the shokunin in Japan that makes my flutes. It's really interesting. He sells bamboo to very prolific makers, and when they make one flute that might not have any gold or ivory or anything like that, and they sell it for about $8,000 minimum, where his starting flutes for the professional level flutes are around 2,000, which I really like. It's interesting, the price, and I think that part of this has to do with with UNESCO. And when UNESCO decides that something is a cultural heritage, or like it's something that needs to be protected, you see the price just absolutely skyrocket. So, for example, one of the instruments that happened to was guqin, and before it was very affordable, and now you're looking at like $15,000 to get like a professional level model.
That sounds about right. I mean, that sounds. I believe it.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you got here?
Oh yeah. So from all that, we worked with a maker in Osaka to have shamisen for $350, not including accessories, but even that can be a little difficult for people to afford.
Yeah. Especially when you're not sure if it's for you or not. $350 is not like, it's not like, oh, I think I'm gonna try wine this week. No, like all my friends drink wine or all my friends drink whiskey. I want to try it, and then like you buy a small bottle. This is 350, but like that's groceries for a couple weeks, not the month.
Yeah. Right. So with the experience of making kind of professional quality homemade shamisen, I decided to use that to make a more streamlined version that could be made much faster. And provide the same sound. I mean, not the same sound, but a very similar sound. So yeah, these, which should be released in a couple weeks, it's called the Shami Buddy. And without accessories, whereas I'm planning to have this for like $250. And when we do the workshops, everybody can play this.
And I'm guessing that you're using, like while you're doing the tuning, I'm guessing you're also using less, expensive materials as well. That makes it, and also things that are a lot more durable, so people don't have to worry about things getting broken or whatnot. Would this also be the case?
Exactly. So these are like kiln dried woods, high quality, high strength, but also what saves the time or can bring the cost down much lower is planning a streamlined approach, where I could get in like an assembly line kind of process, like make all of these cuts for 100 of these at once, and then drill these holes for 100 of them, and then sand this part for 100 of them. For example, this one, just one step, just cutting out the shape would take a couple hours just for one. So planning to do a whole bunch at an affordable price, a lot of thought had to go into. But so let's just compare with this. What's this, you may ask? Well, I brought along a yodeling pickle in case conversation got light.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So here we go. So this is, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. And this is also one that you made, correct? This is a personal one that you've made. So it has a nice warm sound, and it already. I'm gonna wait till I hear the other one, but I think I already know where it's gonna go. Can I hear the other one?
Sure. And this can also have the traditional sawari, that kind of buzzing.
Oh, nice.
Sound, which is a little notch has to be made there.
So it's always hard over line, but it just seems just a little bit less warm. But like the fact that you're able to just rock on it like that, like crazy, that says a lot. It's when you get some like a bad instrument and you try to play a piece on it and you can't play it because the instrument won't do it, that it's a tall tale sign of I got to spend more money. But it's really nice to see that you have this much cheaper option that you can still wail on, and it's going to do the trick. Now, is it your lifetime thing? No, I mean, you're going to have to upgrade at some point, but what a great option for people to really get started. And it's another way to make this instrument more accessible.
Yes, that's really, I think, the goal, and that's always what's necessary for these instruments is to just increase accessibility so everybody can enjoy and kind of keep it living on.
It's also interesting, and like this is one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you so badly is because you're such like a great character. You have a wonderful sense of humor, and I can see this from all the Facebook videos and all of the things you do on YouTube and everything. It's really great, and I think that you'd be the perfect person to for as a teacher, because you're going to make everything so lighthearted and much more fun. And a lot of the students, when I start teaching them shakuhachi, they're they're really surprised at how patient I am with them, and
Mhm.
how many jokes I like to make about whatever, or how much like fun they're actually having. I'm like, well, it's not always about being 100% serious. Like if you go to conservatory, fine, that's a whole nother different thing. You have more of like a drive for that. But I know what you guys are doing this for. You want to, this is your hobby. This is something that you've fallen in love with because you've heard it a few times and you went like, this is something I'm interested in doing. Later down the road, if you want to take it more serious, we definitely can go that. But lessons in traditional Japanese music are actually really exciting, and it's a lot of fun. And even when I studied in Japan and took lessons over there with people, it was the same way. It was fun. It was a lot of really interesting people and really interesting stories. And I think that that's probably the most important part of taking music lessons in general, whether it be violin or whether it be shamisen, is that it's the best therapy session you're ever going to get in your life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think as a teacher, it has to do, with one's own sense of security, emotional security, and whatnot, stability. Being able to, laugh as you're doing it, not have this be such a tight part of your ego that you can't make a joke when this is around.
Yeah,
Because
I think that there are definitely two camps for that thought, and I'm much more on your side for this, where I if I make a really crappy note, I just laugh about it and just move on, and it's not a big deal. I think too. There's and actually Ramos Ryuzen-san had really said this the a really great way when we were talking. It's like the shakuhachi is not special. It's nothing like if you leave it on your own, like on its own, if you leave the shamisen on the ground on its own, it's not going to do anything, right? It takes us as musicians to make something happen. So in reality, as individuals, yeah, sure, we have our own special personality, but there's 7.2 billion of us at this point. It's not it's not that you know special in general. So it's just human nature. And the more that we can express that individual humanistic side of us, which means making mistakes, which means laughing about it. Like you can approach it two different ways. You can get angry and then it's going to sound angry on the instrument. Or you can laugh about it and then it's going to sound funny. And then it's a whole nother different, enjoyable experience to have.
yeah, uh, indeed. So no, I mean, I kind of went through when I was just starting when I was younger. I was much more insecure, let's say. Um,
Oh yeah, of course.
15, and
I remember those days.
yeah, yeah. And I practicing with my brother, and he heard the sound of biwa scratching the string, so he would do that with the shamisen, and I would yell at him like, "Luke, my brother, you can't do that. You're not supposed to."
Don't break the
I,
rules.
Yeah, don't break the rules, basically. You know, keep getting uptight and such. Yeah. But
I did
yeah.
want to ask you, because I did see that recently you did a Shamisen competition. You went out and performed, correct? Can you tell me a little bit
Correct.
about that? Because I used to do competitions in college, because before I did Shakuhachi, I was in the classical music world, and so I did competitions there, and um, I did enough of them in the classical music world to know that I'd never wanted to do them again. I wanted to ask you about the Japanese music competitions and how your experience was, and all that kind of stuff.
Uh, okay. Let me think about that. Okay, got it. Yeah, that was interesting. Well, um, this gets into casual gossip territory. Um, it's so the competition. How does that go? It's um, for Tsugara Jamisen at least, uh, and the specific one in Hirosaki. You know, there's a stage and hundreds of people join these different divisions like CQ, BQ, AQ, as well as a senior division, a youth division, women's division, and men division. Separate them, and then everyone whacks out a jonkarabushi. Generally, you can choose one of five pieces. That's got jonkarabushi, ayabushi, oharabushi, yosarabushi, and sansagari. Uh, but I think 98% of people just do jonkarabushi. And yes, the judges are there, and especially in the CQ, you can see them sleeping. How much about the session actually? Yeah. No, okay, yeah, that's fine. They get woken up when the serious people are about to. Not the serious people. Someone who. Anywho, sometimes they're asleep, sometimes they're asleep, but you can sometimes catch them sleep.
Yeah,
Which
it's the lower level, and that happens in both the classical music world as well.
oh
In the lower level, it's not uncommon. So far lining up.
yeah. I mean, you're hearing hundreds of people just basically play the same song, their own rendition. It's basically the same. It's a structure of a song, and people add in their own little sparkly bits. Let's put that
Hmm.
one after the other, and I would start to nod off too. I'm sure. But how that goes? So it's one of the great ironies about shamisen or Tsugaru shamisen specifically is there's this phrase that they love to say, which is basically like, even a monkey can imitate. You have to make your own Tsugaru style, your own
Hmm.
original. Um, but how, especially Hirosaki works is, I like to say that there's like a preferred list of phrases that the judges are looking for. You could say like a cheat sheet, for
Hmm.
example, a cheat sheet that will give you, if you play these phrases, these notes, you'll get points. And if you play notes that either aren't on the cheat sheet or something else, you'll lose points. Case in point, if you play something like this, pulling up, you'll get a point if you play clearly and such. But if you do a hammer on this way, you'll lose points. And there's no way of knowing this if you're just a regular player. Even if you are the best player in Japan, in the world, if you don't know what they're looking for like this, you will never win.
So what if you do both?
I guess it'll cancel out. Who knows the phrase?
And
So
that's part of the, I think, the inherent problem with Japanese music is that it can be, not always, but it can be very sectarian. That once there's a way that somebody views something, and then it will not be changed. And if the person doesn't do that, they're not going to allow them to win. And It also goes for some people who play outside of sectarian music. So if we think like, and I'm thinking in the Shakuhachi world, if you play in the Chikushin Sakai school, like anything from Watazumi do, um, uh, Yokoyama Katsuya or Taniguchi, that sort of style, um, those teachers would tell you, to finding your own voice and to express yourself in a way that's like, take your current bodily energy and make something of it. If you're at a kinko use like a strict kinko to use styled competition, and you start adding notes, or you add in different dynamic variations that are not in the piece, or playing speeding up and slowing down, they're going to look at you like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
this is not our piece. This is not hifumi. This is something else completely. So
Right.
I totally understand that. I'm sure that in the shamisen world, that's also the same.
Well, I wonder though if it's, at least in for shamisen at least, if it's somewhat connected to money because um, the way to know, the notes to play is you join the, in the Iamoto system, like Oyamaru, one of the Yuha, you pay your fees, and then, sensei will show you, I think, show you the phrases to play. And then you go and you bust it out, and then you show, and then you start your career.
Yeah,
Basically.
that wouldn't surprise me either, because that's how it is in a lot of the violin competitions. We used to, at conservatory, we'd sit down, we'd watch, the Indianapolis violin competition, because there would always be a violinist from our school that was in there. And actually, 2 years in a row that I was there, our school had a violin player that won the Indianapolis violin competition. And so we would watch, and then we'd be like, oh, it's their professor who is the judge, and all the other judges are people that she's studied with, or who has she's taken lessons from, or everybody's friends, and they're in on it. It kind of seems that way. It kind of seems in the in that they're in on it. It's not something that's ever completely blind, and I wonder how they would end out, or how it would end up if everything was done blind.
Uh, I mean, that's really hard to say because this past year, uh, the especially the youth were incredible. It was like looking at an Olympic level gymnastic trick. I'm just the incredible things they could do. Um, a 16-year-old girl won Yusho, won the first place for AQ, um, which is most people have 10 years of experience by then, which probably started when she was 6. Uh, but I mean, so many people doing at such a high level that, yeah, it's kind of, how can you say, okay, you play the best?
Yeah, you're so now we're going on to the subjectivity part of it, and of like and I think that's the primary reason why I don't like music competitions just in general, is that there's that fact of subjectivity. And it's, for example, we could probably say, like, we probably have a piece of Shakuhachi music that we both really really enjoy, and you might like this one person's recording who's also maybe may or may not be a living national treasure, and I like the other living national treasures, and I think this person's way better, and you think this person's way better. But I'm in a competition. How do you compare those two when everything that they're doing is not wrong? It's just different.
Yeah,
It's a big problem.
whoever's got more money.
Yeah. They don't ever give out two first places, that's for sure.
I remember there were, was it the Chinese Olympics? The one where like Michael Phelps and somebody else, like they won within a fraction of a second.
Mm,
Like one person touched the finish line, like just a millimeter before the other, and he was declared first place, and the other was second place,
hmm
which is ridiculous.
yeah.
Is
It,
that
it it's it is ridiculous, but what are you gonna do? It's
that's
it's
true?
like it's part of the, there's yeah. It's interesting because like, if we compare it to sports, there's like a definite winner, right? You did it faster, you finished first, you threw it farther. But in music, you how it's really difficult to say, yeah, you expressed more, because none of the things that we're doing are tangible.
Right.
And so, like, you made that phrase sing more. how do you prove that fact? Because one person might think the other way than you do, and so it's a and also I think that it puts too much ego into the music. And you were talking recently just about, like, dropping the ego as a performer, because it's not about you, it's about the music. You're in service to it, not it in service to you. So I do think that there are some inherent problems with it that I don't really appreciate or much like in general. But
Yeah,
I did want to ask you about that, because it's just I wanted to see if Japanese competitions run in a similar sort of fashion, and it seems to be so in that way.
it's very interesting.
Yes.
The one I can say that the one um, benefit I will say of competition is that it did. I surprised how much it, you could say inspired and motivated me to practice even harder on a daily basis. Which before this year, I mean, I competed once 9 years ago in the solo competition, and then thought, once is enough, move on. But wrapping up this decade, I thought, because I was 2010, that, yeah, maybe doing it once more, you know, that would be kind of fitting and fun.
Hmm.
And then just when I decided to go, then recording myself watching, like, oh, I should fix this, and just being super motivated. And we were considering, like, seeing that as the positive, you know, the positive element is that motivation. We thought with the taiko folks, Kobachi Ken, what if we made a taiko shamisen competition here in the States? And we mentioned it to another friend in the world, taiko world, and he said, kind of, his worry was that it will possibly squash the creative element, because what can you say? This is more creative, or this is, yeah, it would limit creativity. And that's, especially in taiko, especially in these musics, is you know we want to support creativity and creating new expression, not even new expression, just you know, bring out expression whenever possible.
Yeah, and we actually can find ourselves into get into a rabbit hole here, because this is actually where things would we can go into the history of recording, and like this kind of ideal of perfection that's kind of come out of Western classical music, that's really infected the rest of the world music in general. um for the good or for the bad, I don't know. And then in general, with competitions, you find that people are playing one of five pieces, as you've already mentioned, and that's the same for violin. We hear how many times I've heard Wieniawski, Concerto Number 2, or Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, or Beethoven. Any of those, I mean, I've heard them thousands of times, because those are the competition pieces that people play. Now, there's much more variety, I feel, in violin music than there's going to be in shamisen or shakuhachi, but we definitely could easily run into that problem without utilizing contemporary music, which is going to be a hard one to sell in general for competitions. So it's something that's always on my mind as well. And it's I've had a lot of people that say, oh, you should just compete and you should just do it, I think you'd do well. And but then I like all these things that we're talking about come to mind, and I'd rather just play music, man. I'd just rather just do a concert for people who don't know the instrument, and just play my heart out and do whatever I want, rather than trying to please a judge. So,
I wonder if it's like, who knows in the violin world, but for shamisen competition, they're working to change it. But at least in Aomori and Hirosaki, it's been famous for having one person who knows something. For example, the past few years, it's been Shinichi Kinoshita, the king of Tsugara Shamisen, they call it. And then the other judges are, the local councilman, newspaper editor, supporters of the art who know nothing really. They're not shamisen players, but they're on the panel of judges. I think.
so that's definitely not the case for violin. It's always very, very prolific violin players who are on there. People who have had so for um, yeah, I mean, I think of any big name violinist, they would be somebody who'd be invited to be on the board of this, and they're usually people who sit at have really high positions at conservatories. So like Cleveland Institute of Music, Juilliard, Curtis, Rice, USC, or any sort of major university that has, you know, a strong violin or string program. Those people are going to be involved. The only problem with that is that you know, these top schools, they trade all the students anyways, so everybody really knows everybody at this point, especially since a lot of these professors have had their jobs for a long period of time. So you know, they're friends with all the other professors. They might have beef with each other, so that can get a little bit interesting if they both were on the board at the same time. But in general, you know, you know this just as well as I do, the music world is so small.
Yeah,
Everybody, you know, if I even just knowing you, I'm sure that I know like 5 or 6 of the people that you know, associate yourself with.
yeah,
That's not to say that I'm well versed and I know a lot of people. It's just because the music world is that small. And I'm sure that we could even find links that of places where we've even performed in the same location in Japan, or have friends that actually know each other in Japan.
absolutely, absolutely. And that, you know, that is a cool thing in the thinking of well, the human connection is, you know, we're all social animals in a way being put together as a society. We would have just been this tight unit, you know? And even though we've all spread out, you know, thousands, millennia,
Hmm.
uh, because of this interest, because of this art that we're doing, even though we are not all connected in the same place, we all have ties to locations and people. And it's kind of been completely isolated.
Yeah, for sure. So I do want to wrap this up, and but I want to leave that with saying that you are teaching shamisen, and
Ah,
if people were interested in taking lessons with you, where could they find out that information?
I have online video lessons, a free crash course at bachido.com slash school. And there are video, pay for video lessons for other songs in the Tsugaru folk song minyo repertoire, which include sheet music and such. You can get those there. And if you happen to be in San Jose, California, I have a group class in Japantown there.
Good.
Yeah, you can.
And do you also give private lessons online through like via Skype or anything like that?
Not, I've been too busy, unfortunately, not these days, but I do hope to get back to that.
Okay, so we'll keep it on the back burner. Maybe if there's enough people to convince him, he'll do it. And you're also performing all over the place. Is there a place where people can find about your future schedule for performances?
Gosh, there should be. One can go to, I don't post it there. I guess not. I'm,
You're pretty good about Facebook stuff though, and
yeah,
Instagram.
yes, I do post there. That's for sure.
So I think that people should follow your Instagram, and or at least follow your Facebook account so they can see the upcoming events or events that you have done as well, so they can watch those videos. And then of course you have your YouTube channel, which has lots of videos, and I'll link all that stuff in the description for people to go check out.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so, yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I'm looking for. I hope we can meet in person one day. That'd be a lot of fun.
That would be, I'm sure I'm sure we will eventually.
It's you know, as the music world's so small, we'll run into each other. We'll be in the same state at some point.
For sure, for sure. Do you want to, before we go, my dad is playing Shakuhachi right now. Would you care to go up there and have a listen?
Let's go have a journey. This is a
Let's.
surprise ending here, so let's do it.
Yeah, no, totally unplanned. Oh, and thank you for having me as part of uh, your series. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, not a problem at all. A really interesting conversation on the competition end of it.
Yeah. Oops. Here we go.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to do a separate interview for your father at some point in the future.
Yeah, well, he's not much of a interviewee kind of guy, but we can see what happens.